You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 483. My name is Brando. We are in November. We talk about this every year. I can't believe I haven't done an episode about this. The November rain, not just the video, but the cake. We need to talk about the cake with somebody who could possibly get us closer to the mystery, or it's not really a mystery, but I want to. Let's. I'm getting ahead of myself. Bad, Brad. I'm just excited to talk to you. So welcome to the podcast. How's it going, man?
Man, it's going great. I'm just elated to be here. And it's funny that you bring up this topic because, I know it's like a mystery that people are trying to figure out. And I'm going to look right in the camera and tell you I have the answer today. If there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I actually had potentially been ready to go on a different podcast. There were a couple young ladies that had a podcast that were, talking about this. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, I know the guy that did it. There was people talking about, who was it? Ricky Rackman, potentially being the guy. And it's obviously not him if you just know his hair type and his skin, color and all that kind of stuff. But man, it's funny when I started this YouTube channel and I found a lot of people want to hear about the Sunset Strip. The Guns N' Roses thing, man, it was just such a huge part of that. I moved out there in like 1986. And, so I was there right when that stuff was starting to break. And I'll let you take over and steer it where you want to go.
I I love it because I'm almost like in awe of your radio skills. To be honest with you, as a radio guy, I think you handle yourself very well in watching your videos. And just before I lose it, well, I'm going to lose it regardless. But before I lose the thought, I believe you're talking about. I don't know if they still do the podcast, November Rain, or is the 1992 VMAs podcast. Um, Tara and forgive me, I'm forgetting their names. It was T and R. I remember. I think they had been on the podcast like a long time ago, but yes, they had looked into it because at the time, which is just it shows you that this is everything happens for a reason. So I had an old, I'm still going to call it Twitter, whatever.
Yeah, that's
Twitter
fine.
account. It's
Yeah.
X. Oh, by the way, I just did it just because you never know. I did sign up for Blue Sky or Blue Ski or whatever it is.
Okay.
It's more of just
Okay.
a backup.
Okay.
That's neither here nor
Yeah.
there. So obviously, being a Guns N' Roses themed podcast, these things come up. I have been lucky enough to interview Andy Morahan, the director of November Rain. I talked to him about it. I talked to Roberta Freeman, of course, from Tracy and Roberta here to help you, the backup vocalist from Use Your Illusion, talk about the video. So it's come up, and you're right. Every year, it's just funny how why people ever thought it was Ricky Rackman. Look, just because they're both white dudes with long hair doesn't mean they look alike.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just yeah, they all don't, not all metalheads
Yeah.
look alike. So I never thought it
Yeah.
was him growing up. And for those who know
Yeah.
the podcast and myself, November Rain and especially the video, because I'm a little younger than you. I'm 41.
Yeah.
So I came in, I wasn't in this, I'm a New Yorker. I wasn't in the
Yeah.
Sunset Strip. I knew Guns N' Roses from MTV, from that video, really. That was probably my first introduction to them. And the cake thing is so memorable to talk about. So it comes up, and the beauty part of social media and Twitter X is that anybody can find you. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good.
Yeah.
So then I get which I still remember to this day. So this has been an interview, a conversation, a long time coming, from a bad Brad Jams, and saying, I know who that guy is. He was a friend of mine Steve, and you give me a story, and I had that Twitter account suspended, but thankfully, uh, which is silly because Twitter's now a free for all. You can whatever you
Yeah.
want. I had screen capped your your post because I had shared it on Facebook and Instagram. I'm like, look at this. There's no reason why this sounds like a legit story. Obviously, just because
Yeah.
it's on the internet doesn't mean it's not true. So I
Yeah.
want to encourage people, uh, if you want to press pause at this moment, to go to your page because I want them to hear it from your voice first, for you to tell the story. So go to Bad Brad on YouTube, and it's a great story about the Sunset Strip and just a wild night there. And I want you
Wild Hollywood, yeah, is
Wild,
the title of that.
Hollywood is the official title of that.
Yeah.
Listen to it. I think it's less than 20 minutes, and at the end, that's where you we find out that this guy named Steve is the cake jumper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to give a little teaser here. I want to find out. I'm gonna show you a pivot because you said you were 86, and some people are like,
Mhm.
uh, you were in the scene. So,
That's when I got to LA. So I'm a
and where are
kid.
you from originally? Sorry, that's something I wanted to remember. I almost
Yeah.
forgot to ask. Where are you from
Yeah.
originally?
I'm originally from a small town called Williamsburg, Virginia. And
Okay.
it's colonial Williamsburg. It's the tricorn hats and the muskets and all that, the old school, type place. And so I had a similar experience as you would think, say, Axl Rose had, being a kid from a
Mm,
small town and wanting to be this rock star dream or whatever, and going out to LA and opening up those magazines and then going, holy, Axel, when he looks at that TV in
mm,
Welcome to the Jungle, and he gets off the bus and he's got the straw in his mouth and he sees what he's going to become. And he kind of looks away, it's almost like a moment where he looks away in disgust. And it was the same thing for us guys from a small town, opening up the rock magazines and going, holy hell, every band is like these, just styled and all of that whole scene. And there was different variations of it, and this was around 86 when I got there, but I went out there to study guitar. It was like I went to GIT, I did that whole thing for a year. And so I started hearing about Guns N' Roses. I started hearing, like, my buddy who had to work a day gig. He's telling me, "Oh, this guy Rex at the photo lab, he's listening to this band, this club band called Guns N' Roses." I'm starting to hear about this thing, but it really wasn't on my radar till maybe 87. And at that time, I had two roommates, both musicians. One of them is a guy named Keith Howland. He ended up being the guitar player for the band Chicago for 28 years.
oh wow. Okay.
The other guy is Lance Morrison. Lance Morrison went on to play bass for Don Henley. He went on to play bass for Rod Stewart. He's playing in the Dirty Knobs right now with Mike
Mm.
Campbell. So, I mean, we were musicians. We weren't necessarily like guys that wanted to tease our hair out and play in bands. But they chose that path, and I chose the party path of joining a Sunset Strip band. So that kind of gets us pivoted to where we can get into the story.
Right, because we have to backtrack because of how you saw your friend in this band that you had heard about for a while. It's just so interesting. So I do want to say, because in the video that you have on your page where you tell the whole story about that crazy night in Hollywood, I liked your band name, Boy
Okay.
Elroy. I know
Hey,
you said you tell
there's
this
the flyer right there. I'll show you.
and while you're grabbing it, he says like,
Grabbing it off the wall.
it's so
This is
funny.
a
You
headlining shot from the whiskey.
mm,
That's actually me right there. I had the long, hair. This is probably before the time when I met the subject that we're going to be talking of. This is actually no, this is actually probably after, because this was like the last singer we had, which we had this young kid. He was like 18 or 19 years old, and this is when grunge is starting to take over. So we were still mining the Sunset Strip into 93, 92. around that period, which puts me in the area of the November rain and all that kind of stuff.
Right on. So it puts us in a great scene and sets kind of the atmosphere and the environment of when you meet this guy, Steve. You're in this band, Boy Elroy. Of course, a great Jetsons reference. I know
Yep.
you tell the story about you didn't pick that name, and I was
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
I was saying to I said out loud while watching the video, I was like, oh, I don't know, I think it's cool, but I mean that it's your band. It's
We
you know,
made it work, but
you,
it wasn't my first choice. You know, you want something that's kind of tough sounding because it's LA and you know, but in all reality, it fit us because we were kind of like a funky, hard rock, hip hoppy kind of trying to find something different because everybody else was doing the same thing, kind of thing.
okay. So how did you meet this guy, Steve, who would
Okay.
end? So tell me that story, please.
Okay. So it all kind of, in these times, it all kind of starts with a girl, right?
Of course.
And I ended up one day, one of our older drummers that had been in the band, he comes by the band house and he says, "Hey man, I got to go downtown, near downtown, the financial district or something. His parents, he ran some kind of, thing, mortgage thing or something. I got to go down there. You want to ride with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not doing anything." I had a stack of flyers. He said, "Yeah, you can hand out flyers." So I hop in his truck. We go down there. It's this, hoity-toity like office, type area. And I'm there in my long hair and, ragged clothes and whatever. And I look across the street and I see these two girls. And I just, at that point in time, it was all about sales. And so anytime you saw a female, it was an opportunity to get people to your show. And if your shows were packed with tons of girls,
Mm.
you would get interest. So we were literally like trained that whenever we saw a girl, magically the flyer would come out. So I go running across the street and I meet these two girls. Well, one of them was an actress, and her name was Danya Madariaga. I have not been able to locate. I don't know what happened to her. I know of some stuff that she did acting wise, but it's like it's so long ago, and who
Mhm.
knows, what happens. But so I meet this girl. She has a friend. Her friend is recording with Rick James, which is another weird, thing. But
Mm.
they end up coming to see my band rehearse.
Okay.
And we were having trouble with our singer. Our singer was kind of, it was like we were on the fence if he was the guy. So she says, "I got this guy, and he's got the same last name as you. And he's really cute, and he's an actor, and he's got long hair, and I think he'd be a good singer for your band." And I'm like, I'm all ears, because I'm like, I'm not sure this guy we have is working. The whole business is focused on the singer. Ultimately, if you don't have the right front man, you're not going to get a deal. So I'm like, okay. So I start kind of dating this girl, this Danya Madariaga, but she's pretty loco. I mean, being
Okay.
nice. I'm being nice here, but we were all kind of crazy at the time.
Sure.
And she gives me this guy Steve's number. So in the meanwhile, I call him up and I start, meeting with him, bring over some songs. We sit in a room and kind of see if he can, see if he can carry a tune, all that stuff. And we're kind of like, maybe with some work, you just don't know until you, really, work with somebody. And we needed somebody, right? So I'm thinking, okay, well, let's take this guy out to the Rainbow one night and let's see how he does with the girls, right?
Okay.
Like, if you take a guy out and girls are swarming all over him, you might have something here, even if he can't sing a note.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, he's terrible, but when you walk, so it was kind of like a test.
Right.
So we take him, we go to the Rainbow, and we're sitting at one of those booths. It was a half booth, and we sit down, and in the other booth across from us is Slash, and he's sitting in the center of the booth, and he's surrounded by girls on both sides. Very attractive girls, I might add. Like, okay, yeah, like good work, Slash, right?
Mhm.
So we ended up, we're sitting here, it's me and Steve, and I think it was Greg, our bass player. And we're sitting there and we're kind of taking this guy out on the town and see what's going to happen. So these other two girls come up, they end up joining us. You know, we weren't really interested in them. They didn't compare to Slash's girls, but we're like, okay, well, you're kind of a good accessory for us right now because he's got all the girls, and at least we'll have a couple, right?
Right.
So we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden, one of the girls that's sitting over with Slash comes over and goes, "You guys look like nice guys," and we're like, "Oh yeah, we're." Nice guy. I mean, we're in a friggin' band. We don't have probably $20 between the three of us,
But you're nice.
you know, and we're, you know, you're on that street level when you're playing in a band, and we're not getting paid playing these places, you know.
Mhm.
So, but she goes, "Oh, you look like nice guys. If I give you $20, will you take care of our friend?" And there's this girl, is a girl in the booth with them, and she's like nodding out. She's out.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, hell, $20, we can go get, back then, $5.99 a 12 pack of Coors Light. We could get like two of those and still have a couple extra bucks to get some shots or, you know, whatever. We're thinking that, hey,
You're
we
rich.
scored. Yeah, we're rich. And I guess we just carry this girl with us. I mean, what do you do at that point? And they're like, we want to party with Slash, and I can't blame them, you know? And so they hand us this girl. We've got this guy, Steve Henderson was his name. This was a guy that we were kind of looking at to be a singer, and he had like it's like, I call it blonde, but it's really like a dirty blonde, kind of with a little bit of a blonde streak, kind of you see on the sides, but I guess you would say it was brown. But I'm looking at him thinking, one trip to the salon, bro, and you're gonna be the blonde front man, you know?
Yeah.
So you know, we'll continue from there. So we got Steve. We take these girls back to his place. We the whole time the girls are saying, "Oh, we live with Ron," and I'm like, it's just not even registering. One, because I'm not interested in them, but you know, it's turns out the girls all live with Ron Jeremy,
Okay.
and thankfully, he didn't have anything to do with them. You know, it was kind of like, just they crashed at our place and then said, if you give us a ride home, we'll buy you breakfast. And like, okay, well, yeah, we'll take breakfast because
Yeah.
we're penniless, you know.
Right. Right.
And so we drive them back to Ron Jeremy's place. Steve had stayed in his apartment. We lived out in the valley, so Steve is back at his place, and we left the passed out girl with him. So, you know, long story short, you know, we go about a week or 2 weeks later. A friend of mine says, "Hey, let's go to this little dive go-go bar in the valley. It's got like $5 pitchers or something like that." I'm thinking, well, we got $10. We can, you know, we can have a couple beers. So we go into this you know, establishment, to put it lightly. And I see a girl on stage, and she's dancing, and I don't, and she goes, "Hi, Brad," and like lights up. It was the passed out girl that apparently maybe wasn't passed out, or or she was semi-conscious while we were, you know, partying, or whatever. But it was just the weirdest thing because
She was alive. That was nice.
she was alive, and I knew she'd be alive because we left her with Steve. And
Sure.
Steve was, you know, he wasn't really a rock and roller. We were just trying to potentially recruit him into the rock and roll. He was an extra in films, and the girl that had hooked me up with him was an extra. I actually, one night, had family in town, and we got some of those free tickets to go see a sitcom or whatever. And we go, and it was Night Court, and
Okay.
they had a court scene with these prostitutes coming, and this one prostitute with gigantic bazooms had these feather like a brassiere on, and I look and go, that's Danya.
Mm.
And she's like, Brad. So, it's like we had just gone to do a tourist thing, and there she was doing what she does. So I knew, I knew from that. And I've looked to try to find that episode and all that, but I cannot find any reference
Oh,
to her.
really?
And then shortly after that, she got angry with me and tiptoed off into the sunset. And I ran into her at a guitar center, and she goes, hi, meet my husband. So she
Mm.
had literally met some guy in like 2 or 3 weeks and married some guy. So it was just, that's might be why she's disappeared off the face of the earth, but
Different name.
different name. But, I guess, it's hard to know exact times, but it was shortly after that. Maybe it was 6 months, maybe it was a year. And I had cable TV. I turn it on. I'm working a job, but I'm still playing in a band. And I see the November Rain video come on. And then I'm watching, and I see the guy jumping through the cake is Steve Henderson, the guy that we were trying to maybe get in the band. And I literally was like, picked up the phone and immediately go, dude, I just saw you on TV. I mean, that's everything back then was dude, and he's like, yeah, man. And I was like, dude, I just saw you jumping through the cake. And he tells me that he had basically saw the camera was on and the cake was there. And he just decided he was going to plow through it and just to maybe get his, infamy or moment of fame, kind of like just a reckless, crazy thing that probably nobody today would do something like that on a set. But it was a rock and roll set. You had Axel, you had supermodels, you had the Guns N' Roses, and he just probably saw a moment and just said, man, I'm just going to take that cake out.
I got to be more than an extra. I got to be noticed, and he's being noticed decades later, uh,
Yeah.
billions of views later. I mean that's really crazy. So yeah, you had surmised that story in a series of tweets, and I needed to have a conversation to kind of to flesh it out because that's brilliant. Was there any? I mean, obviously this is so long ago. Did he recall any sort of reaction from the crew, from the band? Did he just get up and like run away? Did he just, because think about it, he just stands up and he has cake all over him. Does he go back to craft services with like with cake on his face? Like, was there any other information that he gave you, and have you spoken to him? I'm not
The
saying
the
recently, but since that
yeah.
phone call.
I have not, and I can't find the guy. The
Nah.
same with the Danya. I've looked for him. I even found some guy because look, man, it's been a lot of years. I don't
Hmm.
look the same. People, I'm shocked at some of how of us old guys are looking these days. But
Well,
it,
let's just say with that, your hair is real, by the way,
it,
if
it
anyone
is
questions
it
that.
is real. So trolls. It just is what it is. It just
Uh,
there is a box of color in it. I'll be honest about that.
yeah, but you still got the hair, bro. Good for
I
you.
and
Good for
I'm
you.
gonna grow it out. I'm gonna grow it out and start rocking again. I think that's the next step.
I encourage that. So yeah, I mean it's so many years, and I left off kind of with a teaser of the last episode I did. I mean, you hope the guy is still alive. I don't want it to be that
Yeah,
morbid,
yeah,
but that's just Steve Henderson. And
that's his name.
now I think when you Google who jumped in the November Rain cake, it's like some fans speculate it's a musician named Steve, and others still think it's Ricky Rackman. It's the Ricky Rackman thing should never have become I
No.
mean, that's just like whatever. That's just and it's funny how Ricky has said that he gets asked that still all the
Yeah.
time. That's just lazy work. Come on.
It doesn't even look like him.
No, no, it
You know,
doesn't.
this
Ricky had that thick. You talk about your hair. Ricky, when
yeah.
his hair was long, it
Yeah, it
was
was really
thick.
thick. Yeah.
Yeah, right
This
on.
guy, Steve, had really straight hair, and like I said, I called it blonde, but it's really just like a blonde light and streak that kind of went down both sides, and then what you would call sandy or dirty blonde straight. Just and he really kind of had sort of a higher forehead, a longer face, and he was a tall, thin guy. You know, he had all the things for me. Just I go, this guy's got a good look. He's got good hair. If he could just sing, it would have literally been. He would have just been in my band, and maybe he wouldn't have been in the Guns N' Roses video.
So he couldn't sing, obviously, is why that didn't work.
He
Or
he could sing, but we were looking for somebody with, I wanted David Lee Roth meets James Brown.
ooh,
I
okay.
wanted somebody soulful that had some, oomph to it and could sing some runs and some stuff like that.
Well,
Um,
well, there's got to be because I'm lucky enough to have done this podcast for a while. I know you've been doing your page for a while either, and it's very cool, especially when we talk about the Sunset Strip in '80s and how you're passing out flyers. Now we get fans very differently, online. We
yeah,
have our bases, and I wouldn't know specifically anyone more than you who was there during that time. But you would hope we keep getting that name out there, Steve Henderson. To give him his they say give him his flowers. That's the
yeah,
phrase, but give him his
yeah,
cake. Give him his cake.
yeah, yeah,
That's it should be the household name. We should be celebrating Steve Henderson Day or something every November
yeah.
20th or whatever.
Maybe by doing this, we'll find him. And that's kind of my hopes. Or maybe Danya will raise her heads. But here's the thing, man. I've got a lot of, there's Facebook kind of was the thing that the older generation kind of does. And there's Instagram, and there's different platforms. And I've got a lot of people, on Facebook that are people I knew back in the day. I'm in touch, with a fair amount of them, but there's a lot of them that just disappeared. And I have to wonder, dude, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on. Some people want to not be remembered for anything that they did during that time. Some people run away.
Mm.
I left LA in 94. I realized nothing's going to happen different if I stay here, and I went to Nashville. And I did Nashville for 30 years. I played every kind of gig you can imagine playing guitar. So it for me, but I still kept my feet. I still have a core group of people, musicians and friends that are out there, or some of them moved away, but there are, and I call it the
Huh.
ghosts of the Sunset Strip, because
Ooh,
there's some, dude, and there's some sordid kind of stories, and there's some nice stories, but you wonder, like, are they alive? Are they dead?
right. Mm.
What happened? All of that.
Oh man, if you haven't done an audio book yet, you need to do one. Oh wait, that's called a podcast now. I mean, I really do enjoy when I started watching your videos. It wasn't just some. I don't. You look at it now. We're talking about how the new media people can just turn on the camera and say stuff and speak fast and not speak well. Obviously you've been in front of a crowd for a while, so you're very comfortable. But I really do enjoy the way you speak, the way you tell stories through your videos. So I encourage people to follow Bad Brad on YouTube, and I really appreciate this story and sharing it. And hopefully one day, if we find Steve Henderson, you have to be my co-host or whatever. You deserve
Yeah.
the interview, or however we had to do it as a
We'll do it together, because
yeah.
it was you guys kind of talking about this on Twitter that kind of got me fired up. I don't talk on Twitter much. I don't, I kind of just kind of post my clips, or or whatever, but I'm not like a guy that sits there. But when I saw people throwing Ricky Rockman's name in there, it just, no, I was there. I know who it was. I talked to him after he did it, and then you've got people. I mean, look, it's like there's people that don't believe. I could tell them I'm not wearing a wig now, and there's still some guy out there that go, he's wearing a wig. It's just, it's glued on, or it's, and so it to some people, it's not going to matter that I'm telling them, but I'm going to look you in the eye right now and tell you the cake jumper is Steve Henderson, and that's all there is to it.
I believe you for what that means.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's why I share these stories on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. TikTok, I can't quite get the handle of, but I mean, sharing these stories, making clips of, bite-sized clips of my longer interviews on YouTube. So these stories live on. There's,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people like yourself who may not have been, the headliners of like who is Guns N' Roses,
Yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
have a story to tell. And I'm glad you're using YouTube and you're getting to share your story. And thanks for sharing your story with me today, Brad. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
You got it. So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will you see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.